next item on our agenda is from Mr. Collins, an update regarding the SHS Athletic Facilities Project and the Summer School Maintenance Report. Mr. Collins will provide us with an update regarding the renovation of the track and the installation of the synthetic turf field at the high school, as well as provide a brief overview of other summer maintenance projects. Mr. Collins.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a short presentation for you here on the turf project. Lots of exciting news and some pictures for all of you to see. And let me just get my presentation materials here. So I do want to provide a little bit of a construction update, talk a little bit about some of the related projects beyond just the track and the turf itself, where we stand with the budget, how the athletic program will be impacted for the early part of the fall season, and then a little bit about a planned dedication ceremony. So just a variety of pictures here. I think folks know that the project really started. The bidding process was completed in May, and the construction process started after school let out in the early part of July. And so I just took a variety of pictures here. And off to the right, those white pallets of material there, that's the so-called Brock shock pad, which was part of your presentation when we talked about one of the rationale for converting to a turf field was this player safety and shock absorption. And so that's really just all the material stacked up there. It's kind of like a styrofoam looking material, almost about an inch thick. And so those are sheets of the Brock pad that were delivered and being ready for installation. The high jump pits here, this is also part of the resurfacing that's going to occur with the track once that project gets underway. So that's one picture there. This here is, of course, the main stadium field. And of course, what happened first was the removal of the topsoil, and that was taken off site. Then poured in was stone for drainage, and the drainage pipes underneath that. And then you have this gravel on top with laser grading to make sure it's pitched correctly and extremely even. So again, what we're doing is removing any kind of existing divots that had been built in over time, which were trip hazards, and making a smoother, safer surface for our athletes. Also in the foreground of this picture, you'll see that it's about a 4-foot fence. We were able to replace the netting. All those stand pipes, if you will, are original but painted black, and then we put in a new black mesh netting, which looks really sharp. And then there were several sections of that structure that had suffered from frost heaves over time, and so those were all cut out and replaced as part of this project as well. Here you can see some of the fine grading and heavy equipment in the background there. This is after the drainage system is installed and the gravel put on top to even it out in preparation for the Brock shock pad. Just another picture here. You can see the roller there, which is compacting the surface as part of the grading process. You got a water truck there just to keep down the dust. We did have some dry spells in July where it was needed, not so many in August, of course. And then the track had been scraped as well, so all that red rubber polyethylenes material has been scraped away, and that's what's going to be replaced. This here is the offloading of the actual turf product. So I happened to be there on the day of delivery. Got a few pictures of that, so that was an exciting day. This is actually the installation process. You can see the white material is the Brock shock pad, and then they're laying out the actual synthetic turf rolls on top of that and work from the middle out towards the end zones. You can see the crew out there from Field Turf, which is the turf company in Mass, working on that. And then sewing it, they actually sew those sections together with a piece of equipment and bring all of that together. So it's pretty interesting. And then here's pretty much a, kind of a finished product, if you will, almost finished product, and looks really sharp with the varsity letter. If you're in a varsity letter, you get one of those S's, so we got that in the centerpiece, and in each of the end zones it says Shrewsbury and Colonials, and so it looks really nice there. The track, of course, is not done yet. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. This was kind of a related project that was managed by the Highway Department. This was not part of the turf project, but this was part of adding additional parking spaces due to increased enrollment at Shrewsbury High School. So they added 86 parking spaces. This is down adjacent to the entranceway to the turf field, and they were just putting the asphalt down that day as well. And they had to work with the turf contractor, to kind of coordinate that work. So there'll be some nice convenient parking there as well for the athletic venue. That's just another picture there to give you a little bit more perspective of that project. So it's coming along pretty well. The related projects that I did want to talk about that are in addition to the turf field and in addition to resurfacing the track are that we'll be adding an additional scoreboard, excuse me, adjacent to the left side of our existing scoreboard, and we'll co-use both. The one that we have now, of course, tells us the time remaining and the score and whatnot, and all kind of the data pieces of the game. And then on the left, the new scoreboard will provide us some video capacity. And it will also connect with the existing scoreboard and kind of showcase our major sponsor, which is the Central One Federal Credit Union, and then also another major sponsor, Al's Oil, with their logo. And we still yet have a couple of sponsorship boards on the lower portion still available for businesses to purchase. So we're kind of doubling the size of the scoreboard and adding a new video capacity. So one of the things that you could think about is, and this will obviously engage with the educational television studio program, where students could make a, say, video montage, in their class, and then show it at an evening football game to all of the spectators at halftime or during a break or something like that, so they can showcase their work. You can also, it has the capacity, and we'll work with this in the future, to show live video. So if you're having a track meet, for example, and you have a video camera at the finish line of the 1 mile event, and you want to show the runners, the participants coming through the finish line, and you have a camera there, you can broadcast it onto the video scoreboard so the spectators can see the finish up close even better. And it also has a great sound. So it's not just video, it's also audio, and that thing is loud. Mm-hmm. So that's really exciting. It's also maybe an opportunity for us to work again with some local businesses to sell some shorter advertising pieces as well. Shel Biscotti and Kathleen Cope Hain have been integral in all of this project, of course, and also designing a donor wall to recognize all of our major donors, those who purchased naming rights, in addition to Central One Federal Credit Union, the Shrewsbury Federal Credit Union, and I won't go through the whole list, but we will have prominently displayed all of our major donors as you enter just past the concession stand. And then what we're also in the process of designing is a nice area to display all those folks who purchased a brick. And we, in fact, we met with the landscape designer this morning and decided on kind of a final design. So I want to hold that kind of concept a little bit later, but that's going to be a really nice piece as well. And we have purchased a new ticket booth. So we have one that actually through assistance with the assistant town manager was sold at auction, the existing ticket booth. We have a new one that is bright and shiny and has some nice finish to it. And then we're also going to re-landscape the area behind the concession stand and also in front of the existing flagpole where we do have some bricks that were purchased from donors previously for another purpose, and we're going to refurbish that whole area as well. So those are all the related projects that are ongoing in addition to the turf and the track, and lots of details and coordination with, again, Michelle Biscotti, Kathleen Cohane, Jay Costa, the athletic director, and P.J. O'Connell, assistant principals. So we're continuing to work on those. How are we doing on budget? This is as of August 20th, and at that point we had donor funds of just over $1.74 million. We had previously allocated town funds for the track of just over $285,000, so we had a total available just over $2 million. Our expenses to date are on the right. The project bid for the earth moving and removal of topsoil and grading and all those pictures that you just saw, just over $1.1 million. We were able to effect through the bid process the 2 alternates that we had, so we have new football goalposts and new soccer goals, and we also were able to replace the fencing, so those were additional alternates that we did contract for and have been implemented. I'm happy to report that to this point, we have a very small amount of change orders at $31,000. And the synthetic turf itself was just over $562,000, including all the line marking and logos. So actually our change orders on a percentage basis are under 2%, which is really good. And I would credit that to Gale Associates for very good thorough planning, thorough construction documents, and also good cost estimating given the current environment. So they gave us good information up front. The additional projects that I mentioned with regard to the scoreboard, the donor signage, the bricks, and all that installation, we're estimating to be just under $200,000. Gives us a little bit of remaining contingency because we haven't yet completed the track resurfacing, so we have some remaining contingency. And so our projected costs are just slightly under our available revenue. So we are on budget, and we are still taking donations, and you will vote some of those later this evening in your agenda. So that's great that we're continuing to receive those, and we still have, again, as I mentioned, some naming rights and some sponsorship opportunities for folks to purchase yet still. So, again, relative to schedules, where do we stand? First and foremost, I want to make sure that everybody does know that when we were planning this and we realized that we did have the available funding to go forward and do the bid process and get this project done this summer, we did anticipate that this project really probably wouldn't be completed until through September, and so the athletic director arranged the schedules for fall sports, anticipating that, and moved what would have been a lot of home events to away venues. So that was good planning on his part. The track portion of this project is delayed, and it's delayed due to weather and the substantial amount of rain days that have occurred in August. You can't put down that type of track surfacing on a surface that is moist or wet, so you can't do installations when it's raining, and we had tons of rain in August. Yeah. Excuse me, and you can't do the installation really the day after a rainstorm because it's still too wet and the surfacing won't stick. So it is very weather sensitive. So as of this point, The projected start time from our contractor, subcontractor for the track is mid to late September. And I really can't be any more specific than that. That's the latest information that we have, and again, that will be weather dependent. Once they do mobilize on site, what they do is they'll spend a good portion of time, many days, actually just preparing the site and protecting the adjacent services like the turf field itself, like the fencing, the new fencing that we put in. And it's almost like a paint job. You have to cover those surfaces so that when you lay it down the track, that you're not harming those adjacent surfaces. So there's a lot of prep work, and then they'll begin to lay the track, provided we have good weather. And so it's about a 2 to 3 week process from start to finish once they show up on site. So you can see, we're looking into very likely early October, early to mid-October, depending on the weather, until that track is done. And then it's also temperature sensitive, so we really can't go, much beyond mid-October is what our subcontractor has told us. So, what's the plan right now? There are still some punch list items, some smaller items for the turf vendor to finish up. I'm happy to report that when I was at the high school today, that they had a crew, I'd say of about 5 or 6 guys out there today, up through lunchtime, working on the field on those punch list items. So they're continuing that work, and I'm hoping that they're done very soon. And once we're able to make sure that all those punch list items are done to our satisfaction, and if there's enough break time between when that's done and when we think the track company is coming, then we could use the turf field. And the athletic director would coordinate that, given the existing schedules, and try to get as many different teams on there as possible. Again, this is all if those schedules work out in that fashion. And then once the track contractor shows up on site, we have to stop using the turf field until they're done. So it may be that we have this interim period of limited use, and then we have to get off it again. If the punch list items just take longer and we're not satisfied, with the work on the punch list items, and it gets really close to when the track company shows up, then we wouldn't have any use until they're done. So it's really, a kind of a week-to-week situation. We do have a weekly project meeting on Thursday, so I'll be back up there at 9 a.m. with our project team, our contractors, our Gale associates, the athletic director, and we'll get updates on this and just try to manage forward in that way. And then finally, once all of this is done, and we are hoping that this is by late October, that we have not only the turf and track, but also all those related projects done, that we could have a dedication ceremony in late October. Of course, part of that would be to invite all of our donors, major donors, people who bought bricks, people who made any kind of donation of any denomination, invite them to a dedication ceremony and celebrate what I think is really a fantastic representation of a community coming together in a lot of different ways to support Shrewsbury High School athletics and do it in the right fashion. So that's the update that I have for you on that. And then just in closing, there were a small number of summer facility projects that were kind of out of the norm. All the typical kind of cleaning occurred throughout our buildings, but some of the other projects that were atypical were, again, the additional parking spaces at Shrewsbury High School, 86 additional spaces. We had some typical refinishing of gym floors, some painting at Parker Road Preschool, and some new carpeting put in at Oak Middle School office. So those were some of the other facility projects that occurred this summer under the direction of Bob Cox, Superintendent of Public Buildings. And that's what I have with respect to those two updates.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Questions, comments, Ms. Dwinski?
Great presentation. Exciting times for Shrewsbury Athletics. I was up at the site that was last week, and it looks amazing. Just a question about those related turf projects that you mentioned, the scoreboard, the donor wall, the plaza. Does that all need to wait until the track starts as well, or when does that get phased in?
That's ongoing right now.
Oh, it is, okay.
It can happen simultaneously.
Okay.
We are working separately with a landscape design company, Earth Design, out of Worcester, and just finished deciding on the brick donor plaza and what that will look like. And she's working on construction documents for us to shop around with various contractors who will be different than this. These related projects are much smaller scale, and so we'll shop those around and get cost estimates for those and get contracts in place as soon as we can. So those are happening. They're not contingent upon the track.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fritz?
I think just a huge thank you to you, Pat. We go through the budget season, summer should be quieter. I don't think you got anywhere except the turf. A lot of work, well over a year of doing this. I think it's so exciting to see it now. Like, it just looks great. Like I drive by and see, how many public school systems do this fundraising. You and Dr. Sawyer really stepped outside and did a lot of this. So huge thank you, and it's, I think, been a ton of work on top of what we know you already do, so thank you very much.
Thanks. And as I did mention, this really has been a team effort, not only from the folks that I mentioned, but also our fundraising co-chairs, Jim and Paula Bonomo, who were instrumental in reaching out to folks to get the funding to do this, and their whole committee. So there's a lot of people who have their hands in this project to be able to make this happen.
Great.
And I'll just echo that and add, a big thank you to you and your team. Obviously, this is a very impressive turnaround time. This is a pretty large-scale project that you've managed to fit the vast majority of the work into non-academic time into the summer and with minimal disruptions going into the fall. So obviously, I know that there are some athletic events that are going to have to take place elsewhere for the coming month, but I think that this is a pretty impressive turnaround time. So thank you for your work, and kudos to everybody on the team. Dr. Sawyer, anything to add?
I echo it. The team's done a phenomenal job. The fact we're able to get that number and move so quickly to have things done this summer has been really a yeoman's work by everyone, and it's going to be a hugely successful upgrade for what we have, both for our athletic program as well as the community as well. So appreciate all that work and look forward to that dedication ceremony in the fall to really recognize all the people who have been part of it.
And we certainly don't want to forget the fact that the Parks Department, Parks and Recreation Department, Angela Snell and Kevin Esposito have been part of this as well, and will continue to be as they maintain it for us going forward, and that the maintenance equipment came as part of this project.
Thank you. And of course, the next item to accept gifts related to the campaign for Shrewsbury Athletic Fields pursuant to School Committee Policy 911. Gifts of $5,000 or more must be formally accepted by the committee. The following gifts are being made to support the campaign for Shrewsbury Athletic Fields, and these are gifts of $5,000 each from Flint Pond Village, Lamoureux, Pagano and Associates, Tom and Barbara Peters of Midstate Kitchens, and David and Andrea Lowy. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion that the committee vote to accept gifts of $5,000 each from Flint Pond Village, Lamoureux, Pagano and Associates, Tom and Barbara Peters of Midstate Kitchens, and David and Andrea Lowy for the campaign for Shrewsbury Athletic Fields.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is right back to Ms.